What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of The Travel Guy. I am Adi84. Where's Adi.com? TWExplorers.com. Find us on YouTube, which you're probably watching right now. But if you haven't and you're watching somewhere else, it's Where's Adi and TW Explorers on YouTube. Thank you guys for watching and joining me on this episode today, where we're going to take off where we left off the last episode, where we were talking about this epic baseball trip I took alone, my first solo trip, if you will, by myself. Now, when we left off, to summarize from the last episode, I had flown to Austin, Texas, and driven to Houston for a game, and then went to Texarkana, and then shot across from Texarkana to Dallas to go see a game, and then I was planning on taking a bus up to Denver overnight. Well, the next day, I should say, to go over the night. And when I left you, I was checking into my hotel in Dallas after the game, and I have a few corrections I want to make. It wasn't Green Tree Avenue, it was Greenville Avenue, which we talked about, and that's where the bars were that we went to. So it's funny. I am we on this database. If you go to twexplorers.com, if you go to places we've been and you zoom into Texas, you can actually see all the places we were during this time. So I'm going through, I've saved a few of the locations that I had drank at, and all three are closed. So one was, now I did bring up the speed. At this point, I am leaving the hotel. I've already went to the ball game. It's a night out in Dallas. So I am doing what I need to do. It's got to be like Friday. No, it has to be at this point. God, I don't know. Monday night? Sunday night? I'm trying to remember because I came home on the 3rd, so we could easily find this. Hey Siri, what day was the 3rd of July in 2008? Okay, which should make sense. So the first, I think I left on Saturday morning, so this would have been Sunday night, I guess, or a long weekend. So I went out and I was trying to remember if it was a bartender that told me how to go to Greenville Avenue or what, or was the person I was checking into the hotel. And the more I was thinking about it had to be the person checking into the hotel because I wasn't in the hotel room very often, very long rather, that night. I kind of dropped my bags off. I remember parked the rental car, dropped my bags off, and just went out. Because at this point it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I had kind of pre-gamed some of the beers that I took with me. As we remember last episode, a lot of those beers had exploded in my luggage, leaving my clothes dosed with Bud Heavies. But I was able to uh, wash most of its stuff out, and I was really just wearing the same thing over and over again. So I head over to Greenville Avenue, and I remember it had to be like a Sunday because it was kind of dead. So there's three locations I had gone to. And if you are a Dallas native or lived in Dallas or know any of these places, you'll be familiar with them. These places are now closed. The first one was, let's see, it was a billet bar. I guess it was called Billet Bar. It was located at 1918 Greenville Avenue. I went here twice. I went here when I went into the All-Star game in 2010, and I also went here this night in 2008. It was just like a pool bar. I think I had a drink there. It was cool. Walked around. It was a good time. Second was the Whiskey Bar. I believe this place had a rooftop bar element of it. It was right next door to the Billet's place. This was on 1998 Greenville Avenue, currently closed. And then there was another place a little bit further down the street I went into, and this was like more of a nightclub thing, if I remember correctly. And this place was called, let's see, Geezeling, Gezellig. How I remember all this, I don't know. I think I went back to pictures and kind of compared some stuff and some posts and some Facebook tags and stuff like this to figure out where the hell I went. But these were the three places I went. That was located at 2010 Greenville Avenue. So that was that night. It was a less, how do I say, a very uneventful night that night. We didn't do much. Well, I didn't do much. I was by myself. And I remember just walking around drinking. I was suddenly bored. I was on the phone with a few people. I remember there was a girl that was working as like I guess she was a bouncer or she was a promoter in one of the places. It had to be the place to begin with a G, trying to get people to come in. And she gave me her MySpace, I believe. I mean, we're going back into time here. We're MySpace friends, I guess, for a little while. MySpace was still a thing. I guess we're a couple years into it at this point, but um, yeah, it was a very. It would seem like it would have been a cool area, but it was very underwhelming for the night. There was not much going on there, and I was exhausted too. You remember, I woke up early that day, left Houston, drove all the way to Texarkana for no reason, just to say I'd been there, and then all the way to Dallas. It was probably like 6, 7 hours in the car that day. Got to the baseball game in intense heat. Watched the game. Yes, it was definitely Sunday because I thought it was quite odd that this team was playing a late game on a Sunday. And most usually don't have night games on Sundays, but the reason they do this is because of the intense heat of the stadium prior to putting a dome on with the new stadium. Got to hear say who cares at this point, but I'm by myself and boy, I ended up taking a cab back to the hotel. Now, the next morning, I had a little bit of a task to get done. I had to get back to Austin, which is about 2 hours, drop my rental car off at the airport in Austin, and then somehow navigate myself to the Greyhound bus station in downtown Austin. Now, doing this, I mean, this is before Uber. I was cabbing the whole entire thing, right? I remember waking up early, a little hungover, drove all the way to Austin. My bus would say like at noon. Okay. I don't know. I couldn't find the records, but say it was noon. And I would to go to Austin back to Dallas, which I'm kind of retracking myself, right? And then from Dallas, we were gonna go to Denver overnight, by way of like Albuquerque, New Mexico, that way, right? Now, I never really took a Greyhound bus before, any long distance other than Boston to New York, essentially, right? So I have no idea what to encounter. I had no idea that the Greyhound system and the Greyhound buses were disgusting, dangerous, and scary outside of New England. Because I was taking the Peter Pan Greyhound back and forth to New York, and they seem clean, they seem fine, there's no issues. But it's a more a run route. You know what I mean? Like people were doing this for business and touring and stuff like this. It was they kept their buses up a little bit better in the Northeast, right? Unbeknownst to myself, I have never taken a bus before. I didn't know. One prior time, I was supposed to take a bus from Fort Lauderdale to Fort Myers. That trip fell through. That's a story for another time. And so I never got a chance to take advantage of that. Like, I mean, the Greyhound bus was like $70, right? So $70 to get me up to Denver. That's all it was going to cost me from Austin. So I dropped my car off that morning. I took a bus. I took a tag cab over to the bus station. I remember sitting there at the Austin bus station in the middle of nowhere, hot as hell. And I remember just waiting. My bus comes, and then I remember the minute I got on the bus, I was sketched out. The bus was nasty. It was dirty. It was all these weirdos on the bus, all heading up to Dallas from Austin. And it was like a 2 hour bus ride, and I'm like, all right. And the entire time I'm sitting on the bus, I couldn't get comfortable. I know I'm like, how am I going to do this for another 12 hours once I get, on the bus in Dallas to go up to Denver? Hell am I going to do this? Now I had to be in Denver by, so this was Sunday, Monday would have been the game I was going to Monday night at 7 o'clock, and I had a flight at 12:30 a.m. technically Tuesday morning to fly back to New York City, which fly to New York City, and then take a Greyhound bus from New York City back to Boston. I was doing this trip fairly cheap. The flights were cheap. The flights were free. I had points. One of the hotels I believe was free, so I only had to pay for one hotel, and then the rental car when I was down in Dallas. Unbeknownst to myself, this trip was going to add up quite fast. At the point, I was like, whatever. So I remember getting from Austin to Dallas. I remember getting off the bus, and my bus was delayed going further to Albuquerque. And the delay was probably the best thing that happened because I popped out my laptop in this sketchy ass bus station in downtown Dallas. I mean, sketchy. I mean, there was some weirdos there. And I was super uncomfortable, especially being by myself. And I had this computer with me, and I didn't really have a lot of money on me. I was just kind of traveling. I was just a nomad at this point, right? So I remember at one point I go, what are my options here? How much would it cost me to fly right now to Denver? Now I just had to get to Denver. Once I got in Denver, I could figure out how to get to the airport. Another thing too, I didn't realize how far away from the airport was from downtown Denver. That's another story. We'll get into. Um, and my other option was how much would it cost to rent a car and just dog this out and drive it myself? Now, I didn't have enough money for a hotel to stay the night anywhere. So essentially, what I was going to be doing was just getting a rental car and driving my ass off until I got tired, and then pull over at a rest area somewhere and continue on my journey. Now, the more I was thinking about this trip, the more I was really going towards this direction because this route would have took me into Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska voluntarily, and Wyoming. Um, one, two, three, four states I hadn't been to before, and till this day, I have not been back to Kansas or Nebraska. So it was two states I've been to that I hadn't been to and haven't been to in 20 years almost. So um, I was using this as a good idea because I wanted to hit these states up and I wanted to try to get, all the states in. So I went online and for miraculously had Wi-Fi at this bus station, which I don't know how the hell that happened, but I went on to a website and I was able to get a rental car that was going to be able to be picked up at the Dallas airport. And then by the time I got the rental car, I was just going to get on the road and drive. I had no GPS, or if I did, I had a little Garmin one. I think I had a couple maps, and I kind of mapped out my route essentially by I could have went just Kansas and then jumped on I-70 and just went west and ended up in Denver. But I wanted to try to hit Nebraska, so I took I-70 for a little bit, then drove up this like state route up to the Nebraska border that took me to like this. I don't know if it was another interstate or let's see, I can't remember. But this route was going to get me Nebraska in, and it was also going to get me a little bit of Wyoming too, um, because I was going to come in from that section of the state by Cheyenne and then shoot down to um, Denver. Yes, okay. So it was I-80. So I took, I guess it was like a state route, like 385 or something like that, that connected from I-70 due north to um, I-80. And then from there, took I-80 west into Cheyenne and then jumped on 25 south to Denver. And that was my route. And on the process, I stopped at a um, what's that burger joint that has the clowns? Jack in the Box because I hadn't. And at the time, I was at this time too. I was also trying to check off all these fast food restaurants I was going to too. So I was kind of doing a few things at once. So got the rental car. Well, first before I got the rental car, getting to the airport was a challenge. So how the hell am I going to get to the airport from downtown Dallas? Am I going to waste money on a cab? I'm not sure. So I just started walking. It was funny. I just left the bus station. I took a left, and this homeless guy comes up to me, and he starts talking to me, and he starts like hustling me for if I have any money or anything like that. And I go, no, sorry. And he's like, where are you trying to go? And I'm like, trying to get to the airport. How do I get to the airport? It's the easiest way to the airport. And he's like, there's a train. They'll take you to the airport. And he's this way. He's like, I'll show you. Now, I don't know what made me listen to this guy and follow him to the airport. He could have followed me somewhere. I could have got robbed. It doesn't matter. But for some reason, I felt that he was being sincere with me. So we start walking and we start cutting across. Like we zigzag into buildings, and we're going to like this downtown area. It looks like we're like a giant, like I don't know, like the governor's mansion. There's this big giant building in downtown Dallas, and there's a train station there. And we're walking. As we're walking, he's telling me the story, and I wish I remember his name, but he told me it was his birthday today, which I don't know if that's true or not. And you know, I was just asking him questions about how'd you end up this way, yeah, the. He was telling me his life story about how he came, from bad investments or, but it was just a story. He was telling me his life story. And I was buying it. I felt bad for him, especially if it was his birthday. And he also was helping me trying to get to a place where I needed to be. And I was also obviously in distress. I had no idea where I was going. Never been to this town before. Had no idea how to get to the airport. I just needed to get to the airport to get a rental car, and then that would have been fine. And he's chatting me up. It was probably about a 20-minute walk. We walked all the way to where I needed to pick up the train. I'm sorry. So the building wasn't a giant state building. It was a train depot. And I was taking like the light rail, commuter rail outside of the train station and heading over. It was like a 25-minute train ride. So he gets me to where I needed to be, which I was extremely grateful for because I would have had no idea how to get there. Because at the time we don't have GPS on our phones, so I was just kind of just gonna wander around and try to find it. And I think that's essentially what I did. I remember taking a right out of the train station, just walking, and that's where I encountered him. So he took me all the way to the train I needed to take. So out of gratitude, I gave him I gave him $20. I go, hey, I go, thank you so much. I go, you saved me probably this, not more, in a cab to the airport, or me just wandering around for hours and missing the train and not being able to get to the airport where I needed to be. And he was grateful. And you know, this was almost 20 years ago, and I still remember it. And I wonder every once in a while when I think about this trip and the story, I wonder where he is. I wonder if he's made it. I wonder if he was able to get out of being homeless, and if he's still alive. But if you're out there, buddy, and you listen to this podcast for some reason, thank you because you helped me a great amount that day to get where I needed to be. So I get on the train and I'm heading to the airport. It was like a 25-minute train ride. And I get to the airport and I just navigate around to the rental car place. I grab my rental car and I did something which this was like the first time getting rental cars by myself too. You're gonna remember this too, because every time I've gotten a rental car prior, I was with someone else on a trip. It's never by myself. Maybe once or twice actually, but I was with someone. I wasn't alone. So I um I opted for the gas thing, right? You guys might be familiar with this. You could prepay your gas, so like, you know, so the gas is like 3.50 a gallon. They'll charge you times how many gallons are in the tank. Now you got to be careful because if you do this and you only use a quarter of the tank, they're still gonna charge you for the whole entire tank. So I knew this, so I was just gonna drive the tank to dry, basically get my money's worth because I didn't think I was gonna have enough time, and I didn't want a chance at leaving the baseball game, getting to the airport in time because I had to be at the airport by like 10:30. I had to be through security at 10:30 to be 2 hours before my 12:30 flight. Okay. So I did it anyways, and I figure I'll just fill up and I'll just manage the gas and figure out how to get to the airport, drop it off, and try to use all the gas that's in the car. Simple, right? So I get the car and I start driving north. So I had to be on Interstate. Let's see, I get the map right here. Interstate 35, going north from Dallas. And I remember just driving, and I finally got to the Oklahoma border. And during this time, I had this power inverter in the car that I plugged into the cigarette lighter. And because I didn't have a phone charger per se, but I had a plug. So I'd plug my plug into the power inverter and then plug it into the into the cigarette lighter of the car. Well, something happened when I was driving and I blew a fuse. I blew the fuse to the cigarette lighter. So my power inverter didn't work. Therefore, I had no way to charge my phone. It was quite a predicament. So I'm driving and I'm pissed. I'm like, what am I gonna do? I can't charge my phone. My phone's gonna die. All this stuff. So I'm driving up the highway, and as soon as I get over to the border in Oklahoma, I see like a exit with some restaurants. I go, okay, maybe I can go into a like Applebee's or something, right? Or some kind of restaurant. I ended up being at Applebee's and sit at the bar and asked if I could just plug my phone in for a little while I'm eating at the bar. Now, I had never really gone into a bar alone, like a restaurant like this before at this point, other than the one I worked at. I never would just show up at a bar and restaurant in a strange place. I was always very apprehensive. So I remember walking into the Applebee's. I remember going to the very last seat of the bar. There was a little wall there that had an outlet on there. I was just going to ask if I could plug my phone in. I was going to have a beer and maybe some dinner. And then I get my phone to a decent charge and continue on the way. So I remember walking in. I sat at that bar stool for 25 minutes without a soul coming to me. And at this point, it's like, now, mind you, I picked up the car. It was like 5:30 at this point, 5:30 at night. So I've been driving for like 2.5 hours, 2 hours now. It's like 7:30. Sitting at the Applebee's. It's very, very bright out. It's the summertime. I'm close to the mountain time zone, so it's time's a little bit later. The sun stays up a little later. No one comes up to me in 25 minutes. I'm literally just sitting there like, anyone gonna help me? Nothing. And I know the time is not in my favor because I got to continue going. I got to make up some miles tonight. So I try to get a Fox if I want to go and do this extra. Like I said, I could just take I-70 and go to Denver, and it would have saved me like 2.5 hours on this, 3 hours on this trip. But I really wanted to hit Nebraska and Wyoming, Didn't know I was ever going to be back up there serving up. Like I said, I'd never been back to Nebraska. So I sat there and I was just pissed. No one came up to me. Like it wasn't even that busy. Like I don't know what the deal was. Maybe they thought I looked young and I wasn't supposed to be at the bar and they didn't want to serve me. I don't know what the situation was. I don't care. I left. So I had to figure out a way to charge my phone in the car. So I remember driving and then going. I wonder if it's just a blown fuse at this point. At this point, I didn't know it was a blown fuse, but I assumed it was. So I found the fuse box in the car. I pulled out what I thought was the fuse to it, and sure enough, the fuse was blown. I go, all right, cool. So I'm like, where do I get a fuse? I'm like, think I go to auto store. I bet truck stop has it, right? So I'm driving up the highway a little bit, and I stop at like a Travel America or a Pilot truck stop, right? Run in. They did have fuses. I grabbed like the only way I could buy them was in like a whole $10 thing of fuses, right? So I bought a bunch, the whole thingy, popped it in, popped my inverter in, boom, worked, beautiful. It's like, all right, here we go. So now I get power on the phone. Um, I'm driving. I don't know if I had satellite radio in this car or not. I don't think so. So I'm just like scanning like AM stations for talk radio and stuff like this all the way through. So I mean, it was probably the cheapest rental car you could have. It had nothing special to it. You know what I mean? So I do sometimes I would bring my XM radio and then it's like plug it into the car and use it. But I'm not sure if I did it this time because I remember distinctly listening to the AM station driving to the Rangers game, which I could have easily just listened to XM radio. So I think no, I don't think I had it with me this time. So I drove and drove and drove all through Oklahoma. I remember going through Oklahoma City. It was dark out at that point. So whatever time I got up there, it was already dark. I didn't have time to stop. I kind of just plowed through. And I got to, which I believe was the Kansas border on I-35 going north. And it's probably like, let's see, look at the map here. It's like right over the border. And I'm like, okay, I'm here. What do I do now? So if I continue on I-35, it would have took me east, which I didn't want to go because I didn't want to go further east than I had to, right? So I ended up taking I-135, which brought me straight up to the Nebraska border, like right up to like I-70, right? So let me get a better map here because I'm looking at a map here and I'm kind of not helping myself out here because the map is just not good. But um, I feel I'm not sure, and I could be wrong, that this wasn't 195, 135 when I was driving it. I so I'm driving up towards Wichita. So 135, all right, cross the border, and I get up to this junction up here. So I could continue north through Wichita. 235 will take me around. 135 takes me through the city, connects back to 235. 135 essentially takes me to. Where does it take me? I'm completely lost there. I know I probably should have this planned out better. But whatever it takes me, the road is I don't continue on 35 all the way. I end up taking I feel like it was called East and West I-35. I don't know why, but I remember it being like East or West. But whatever it did, it took me to I-70. I eventually got to I-70, which I think is in this map sucks too. Where the hell is I-70? It's not helping me. Past Wichita up to Salina, which is I believe where I-70 is. Yes, okay. There you go. Like I said, I don't think 135. I feel like it was like 35 East, 35 West. I don't remember that. I don't know 100% sure. If anyone remembers back in 2008 what the interstate notifications were during this, please let me know because I would love to know because I'm confused. I don't remember. So at that point, I remember pulling over to a gas station and sleeping. So I was gonna try to figure out how I'm gonna sleep in the car and trying to be like low key. So I thought if I pull into a hotel parking lot, they just think my car is like part of the hotel and no one will really bother me. And the car I had one of those cars with the back seats flip forward. and I was able to like, so I figure if I go and flip the seat forward and I crawl, so like half my body's in the car and half it's in the trunk kind of thing. That like, and I kind of throw some like sweatshirts over where I'm sleeping next to my luggage. No one will see me if they look into the car. They just think the car's open. So I remember pulling into like some random hotel, and I go, all right, if I get like 2, 3 hours of sleep, I'll be good. I get ready to rattle for the morning. So this is like 1 o'clock in the morning. I pull into the parking lot. I do that. I pull the seats down. I crawl halfway into the trunk, halfway into the car, and I set my alarm on my phone to kind of wake me up in a couple hours in case I oversleep. And I mean, it was probably the worst sleep ever. I was so nervous. I couldn't get comfortable. It's just you're just sleeping in a cot. You know what I mean? You're afraid you're gonna get caught. Like I didn't know like if they're gonna come around and start towing cars, right? Imagine me towing a car when I'm sleeping in it, right? So I was able to get enough sleep, and I remember like waking up like when the sun was coming up, I guess you could say, and I just all right, I get back on the road and I continue north. And right before you get on I-70, there was like a truck stop, and I remember pulling into that truck stop, and I remember just parking over in the back. It was like 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, and just taking a solid hour nap, and I slept pretty good because I knew I had a whole day ahead of me, and it was gonna be crazy. So I take that nap, I get in the car, and I start heading west on I-70 until I get to that state route, which ended up inevitably taking me up to Nebraska, um, where I was able to like kind of jump on to eventually get to I-80, which I was going to take into Wyoming. Now, I'm doing this all on like a map. Like I'm not using GPS. GPS would not take me this way, right? GPS would essentially just take me I-70. I would have been in Denver for like 4 hours before the game if I went this way. But I kept on going north, and I was like, I don't know how I was figuring out that I was gonna have enough time. I think I was just doing the math of the miles. Like I knew this was X amount of miles, and I was going X amount of mile per hour. I could get there at a certain time, right? And perhaps even my GPS, maybe as I was traveling, was adjusting my routes for me, as it does sometimes. So I can't remember all the statistics of how I got up there, but I remember when I got to that state route in Nebraska to take me north to I-80. There was a gas station called Come and Go. It's the first time I've ever seen those. I was like, oh, that's an interesting name for a gas station, right? And I remember going in there, fueling up, and I remember just driving for like an hour and a half through Nebraska with zero cell phone coverage at all. I was dead in the water. I had nothing. I remember just driving, driving. I didn't get a glimpse of cell phone service until I hit the I-80 mark on the highway, and I finally started getting it going. And then I was just like, all right, let's go. So I drove through I-80, and there's a little turnoff called I-76, which I was tempted on taking. Did I take it? No, I didn't. I-76 would have took me. So North Platte is where I ended up, right? So that was State Route 83. I took US 83 north from 70 to 80, got to North Platte. I remember North Platte, and I went west. Now, if I could have took 76, and it would have took me right into Denver. So this was my second opportunity to take a shortcut through Denver. But I decided not to. So I decided to go through the panhandle of Nebraska to get into Cheyenne. So it was like another 2.5 hour kind of detour for no reason whatsoever. Just to say I had another stage, which I guess is all that matters at this point, right? So I get to Cheyenne, and it is probably, if the game is at 7 and I'm like 2 hours away, five. It's probably like 3 o'clock at this point. And I had one destination in mind, just to get to Denver at this point. So I'll leave the story here at Cheyenne because I know it's very riveting. I know you guys love me just going back and forth on all this mappage, trying to figure out how the hell I went from one place to another. But I'm trying to relive this in my mind because, as you know, I'm in the process of writing the book about the stories, and doing these podcasts is actually helping me expand my mind a little bit to get into some details of like this trip and like what I did and how I was doing it. So I thank you guys for listening because this is all going to be in the book and with a little more in depth, a little more detail. And I want to be able to kind of look back on this or have someone look back on this years later and remember, like, or just be like, wow, this is a hell of a trip. You did this before technology was really a thing, as it is today. And you did by yourself mostly too. So this was the start of a lot of trips by myself. And I was only like 10% in of the stadiums at this point too. So, and I hadn't been back to any of these three stadiums. One closed. I've been back to Dallas, but went to the new one. Never been back to Houston since this, and I haven't been back to Denver since this. Well, I have been back to Denver, just not at a game at this point. So, um, these still live kind of pretty strong in my heart, this trip. So I'll leave you at Cheyenne. I am at Cheyenne, and I am about to go due south down Interstate 25 into Denver, and we'll pick it up there. And I'll tell you about Denver, getting to Denver, going to the game, going from Denver from the airport, what happened at the airport, me from the airport to New York on the plane overnight, and then New York to Boston. So, thank you guys for watching and listening to this podcast. Part three of this adventure will be out soon for your listening pleasure. Please leave comments below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've done this drive, if I missed anything that I should have talked about, and if you think I'm completely insane for even doing something like this, which all could be true. But again, thank you. Please subscribe. I'll talk to you guys soon. Watch our videos too. We got plenty of travel videos on this page too, And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. All right. All right, cool. Guys, you have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you guys soon. I'm Adi84 from where'sadi.com, Where's Adi, and TW Explorers, twexplorers.com. See you guys later. Bye.